This episode of the Athletic Scholarship Podcast is dedicated to the Humboldt Broncos junior hockey team of Saskatchewan, Canada. Going through tragedy, going through trial, and going through suffering and sorrow right now. We're with you. Hello, I'm Jon Fugler. Welcome to episode 91 of the Athletic Scholarship Podcast. As mentioned, this episode dedicated to those families who were affected by the tragic accident over the weekend. The Humboldt Broncos junior hockey team, losing 15 people, most of them players, losing their captain, their coach, their announcer, 14 other injured. I'm praying for the families, and our hearts are just torn as we consider what happened over the weekend. And those who are listening now, I'm sure you've heard by now what happened in a tragic accident with their team bus colliding head-on with a semi, and just a disaster. And so many young boys, young men who had dreams ahead of them, who had scholarships and pro careers on their minds, all that stopped in an instant. And so we, as those who are sports families, can surely identify with those families who have been affected. I'm praying for you who are injured. I'm praying for you who are family members of those who have ones that were injured or lost in that accident. And my heart goes out to you. There's a GoFundMe account that's been established for these families, and I'll have a link to that in my show notes. If you want me to send you the link, please just email me at john@recruitme.com. John, Jon, @recruit-me.com. It's hard to transition into this episode with that news on my mind and that situation on my heart, but I do so now as we consider this whole thing of an athletic scholarship. And I look at the contrast, too, of what happened in this accident with lives lost. And then we look at athletic scholarships, and it helps us to put all this in perspective. Yes, we're pursuing that scholarship dream, but let's not lose sight of life. Let's not lose sight of that it's more than just sports, but there is family. And on the spiritual side, too, the most important thing I believe in is my relationship with God. And the most important thing I would pray for you is that you have a strong relationship with God and that you pursue Him. Pursue Him much more than you pursue an athletic scholarship. But we are here to talk about athletic scholarships, and in this 4-part series I'm calling Supercharging Your Recruiting Game, I want to spend these 4 episodes really zeroing in on things that you can do that will empower you to carry on this recruiting process on your own as a family. You don't need to make huge investments. You don't need to do drastic things to get an athletic scholarship. Yes, you have to do purposeful things. You have to do things that are different than most athletes and most families, but you don't have to do drastic things. You can pursue and get this athletic scholarship by following key principles and key steps that will get you there. I hope you enjoyed the last episode. If you didn't get a chance to listen to that, please listen to it. Kind of sets the table for this whole Supercharging Your Recruiting Game series. And in this episode, what I want to do is give you 2 points of advice. And then the third thing I want to do is give you some practical things that you can do regarding your resume or player profile, because that is the document, the key document that you need to pull together. I've said that before, and I'll just say it again. I'm going to harp on that because this must be done right. In fact, I had a parent write to me and said that they had sent out letters and the profiles, letters and profiles, emails and profiles to 28 schools. And within 2 weeks, they received a response from 5 of the schools, had video requested from 3 of the schools, and have already had email contact and further contact with the coach of one of the schools. That was just in 2 weeks. And 4 of the responses came from schools in the top 10 list of that family. The 2 video requests came from 2 of the top 3 schools, and the further contact through email came from the number 3 on the list. So just getting started within 2 weeks, getting that response, and they're feeling pretty good about it. And I want you to get that same kind of response as well. That's just the beginning. Really, within 3 or 4 weeks, that's when the most activity happens, when you do make your initial contact with schools, and you do have to make that initial contact. That is so key to do that. So we're going to delve into that today. Now, just as an opening for you, this is the Athletic Scholarship Podcast, episode 91. I call it 15 minutes that will change your scholarship future. I'm Jon Fugler, your athletic scholarship coach, recruiting expert, a father of 2 scholarship athletes. Went through that whole process with our boys. It was awesome. What an experience it was. And I've been teaching and training families since 2002. This whole recruiting process, how to get to that athletic scholarship, how to achieve your dream. I've written a book called the Athletic Scholarship Playbook. I encourage you to go ahead and get it. It's on Amazon, whatever format you want it, whether you want it in Kindle or print or audiobook, it is there for you. What a great guide. It's a complete college recruiting roadmap for high school athletes and parents. I also have for you, and people are going ahead and grabbing this for free on my website, the Recruiting Power Pack. Talking about player profiles, well, in this Power Pack is an actual template for you to build your resume or player profile. I'm going to get into that more today, but you can go ahead and get that resume and player profile template at recruitme.com as part of the Recruiting Power Pack. In that, as well as an audio on how to best use video, when and how to use video in the whole recruiting process. Valuable information for you. That's an audio that you download. It's an MP3. And the third item is the first steps to an athletic scholarship. That's actually the first item in the Power Pack, the third one I'm mentioning here. But that really does, in writing, lay down the foundation to get that fast start in your first steps to an athletic scholarship. So please go get your free recruiting power pack at recruitme.com. And especially want you to take a look and pull out, when you get a chance, the template for your player profile. Well, I promised you a couple pointers before we get into the player profile, and here's one of them. There's a lot of noise out there. You're competing with thousands of athletes, perhaps, hundreds at least, but probably thousands of athletes that you're competing for attention. If you think that coaches are just going to find you in the midst of all this noise, in the midst of all the choices, no, it's not going to happen. They're not just going to find you. That's why I insist that you take the initiative all the way through the process to make sure you are noticed, so you can get up above the noise. And what I'm going to talk about today with the player profile will help you move it up a notch. So you're making more quote-unquote noise in this. You not only want to get attention amongst all the noise, but you want to keep a coach's attention in all the noise. Once recruited, always recruited? No. You could have interest from a college coach, but then he or she loses interest. Or another athlete or athletes move into your position and you get moved back down on a coach's list. Or they haven't heard from you, so they don't think you're interested. You have to get attention, keep attention of college coaches. There is a lot of noise out there. What I want to share is solutions to that. One is, and we're going to talk about the player profile. That's one thing. I'll go into more detail about that. But make sure your introductory email is, concise. It is, every word counts, every sentence counts. You're presenting your best self, student athlete. Parents, you're presenting your son or daughter in the best way. You make sure, as I said before, it's personalized. It's not just a dear coach, but it's personalized to that coach, to that school. You do things that set you apart from other athletes. The fact that you're going after it, hey, that is that is something that sets you apart from most athletes to begin with. Once you take the initiative and make yourself known, then you're competing against the pool of athletes that are doing that, and you need to continue to get attention and keep attention. Make sure that introductory email, that introductory letter is pointed, it's focused, that you're stating things correctly, that you're using words that grab a coach's attention and make it personal. So that's one thing you can do to get attention. To keep attention, don't stop communicating. Don't stop communicating. In other words, keep communicating. You've got to do that to keep their attention. You got to remember that with all the noise out there and all the activity, with all the athletes that are competing for your athletic scholarship with those particular schools, you need to continue to remind the coach you're there. If the coach is interested in you, then please do what you can to keep that coach's interest. So that's one thing. Get and keep attention. There's a lot of noise out there. Second bit of advice, in this whole process, don't spend money on something that doesn't fully disclose its pricing. Don't buy something that doesn't fully disclose its pricing. If you decide you want to go with a recruiting service or a consultant, find out what is the bottom line. How much is this going to cost you? If you're going to go to a website and post your profile or resume or video or both of those, then make sure you know what bottom line, what is that going to cost you? If you're going to go to a camp, make sure you understand what the full costs are, not just the registration. If it's a multi-day camp out of town, what is lodging? All these things. Don't spend money until you have the fully disclosed price or you've done the research to find it out. You need to spend your money wisely. Now, you're saying, well, John, of course, I know that. But sometimes we go into something that we don't really have the full picture, and we make assumptions. And when you are in this recruiting process, and it could be a marathon, you've got to spend your money wisely. And oftentimes we get bled to death because we're spending money that, man, we didn't even know it was going to cost this much to go to this camp, or this much to go to this tournament, or this much to get help from so-and-so recruiting service, because you didn't do your homework first. Make sure that you have fully disclosed pricing. Another thing, too, if they aren't disclosing their pricing and you just can't get an answer, that is a red flag. If they're saying, well, it could cost such and such to such and such dollars, that's not what you want to hear. You want to know how much it's going to cost you to have that service represent you. How much is it going to cost you to park your resume, player profile, and video on that site? If they're hedging and they're not giving you numbers, then I would turn around and walk in the other direction, because believe me, that is a red flag. So that's the second thing I want to share with you. These are two things you need to know in order to supercharge your recruiting game. As I said, you don't want to be bled to death. It could be a marathon and you don't want to run out of steam in mile 20. You want to be supercharged all the way through. You got to get above the noise, and you also have to be knowledgeable and not spend so much money that you run out of money and you're spending money needlessly because you're investing in something, you're buying something that doesn't fully disclose pricing. At RecruitMe, it's plain and simple. You go to recruitme.com/system. You can see two systems that I have there, and the pricing on those fully disclosed every time, plain and simple. It's pay one price. Athletic Scholarship University is also something that I offer. That's pay one price, fully disclosed. It's right there on the website, and it's plain to see, not hiding anything there. And you can check those out. Well, let's get into the main body of this episode, and that is how to create a resume or a player profile that is one that coaches it'll attract their attention. And I call it a clean resume, I guess. First of all, as you do this, as you do the resume and player profile, I highly recommend that you keep it to one page. And I don't mean front and back. I just mean one page, one size, and font that isn't so small that the coach can't read it. You're not going to be telling your entire history. You are just using this as a way to get a coach's attention. He or she can read through this and know whether or not this is something that you're an athlete that they would be interested in pursuing further. So that's what you want to do. And here are the things that I would make sure, above all, that you do right. One, spelling. I got to tell you, I've seen so many resumes, I've seen so many letters and emails where the spelling there's so many errors, so many spelling errors. Folks, you're trying to get into college on scholarship. Please take care of the typos. Secondly is grammar. That's got to be right. It's got to be correct. Have somebody proofread what you're sending out. Make sure the grammar is correct. Spelling and grammar are key in this whole process on your player profile and resume. So those are two things. Third thing about creating a clean resume is that you need to have a powerful headline. If a coach is looking through maybe 10 resumes that day, that headline will make you jump out and make that coach read a little further. For my son, I think we used, he was a pitcher, so we had 87 mile per hour fastball and a 3.6 GPA. Well, that's pretty good. The coach is going to look at that. There'll be some schools where an 87 mile an hour fastball just isn't going to cut it, and he's not going to get recruited there. But that's fine too. You're using this as your first step in finding the school with the best fit. Great headline. I'm not a fantastic headline writer, but you may be good. You may know somebody is good. Try a few out, write some down, try them out on people, and see which is the best headline for you in this resume. The resume should, as you'll see in the template, in the Recruiting Power Pack, remember that's at recruitme.com, and it's free, absolutely free. There's a spot there, a section that is for personal information. You want to put your address, phone number, email address, of course, when you're graduating, when you were born, GPA, SAT, ACT. If you go to the template, you'll see that. So you got personal information right there. You want to, they're recruiting people, not just athletes. So you want to be able to present yourself as a person. Got a nice big picture there alongside your personal information. And then your school and coaches and their contact information. Then physical information, height, weight, your speed, if you're maybe your bench press, what that is, depending on what sport you're in, whether that's going to be relevant or not. What's your dominant hand? For instance, if you play basketball, maybe you're left-handed. And any other sports that you play. So you want physical information there all in one section. Again, look this up in the template. Then there are 3 narrative sections underneath there where you get to expound more on who you are. Maybe you want to include in there some of the things that are your specific stats and achievements, your potential. You want to use quotes from other people, coaches that are credible, that will present you in a good light. But there are 3 sections there that cover that. If you go ahead and download the template, there's also a sample profile in there you can look at to see what it looks like when it's a finished product. I have to emphasize this doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be complicated. It has to be simple, easy to read in one page, gets right to the point, and coaches will know whether or not they're going to pursue you to the next step. You say, this sounds difficult. Well, it's not. You don't need to hire somebody to do this. You are empowered. You can do it on your own. I have empowered you a little bit through this podcast. It's hard to show you on a podcast, but if you download the Power Pack and you take a look at that template for the profile and resume, you'll see exactly what I mean. It's very clear. You can fill it out. You can do it. So please go ahead and get that. It's at recruit-me.com, recruitme.com. Well, that's it for today. Not overloading you with too much, but working on supercharging your recruiting game. This is important. It's key. That resume, that profile, that is the document that you'll be introducing yourself to coaches with. Remember the 2 points of advice I gave you before that. There's a lot of noise out there, so you have to get and keep attention in ways that will set you apart from the rest of the athletes. Secondly, don't buy something that doesn't fully disclose pricing. You got to spend your money wisely. And next week, we're going to do part 3 of Supercharging Your Recruiting Game. If you have any questions between now and then, go ahead and ask me, Jon at recruitme.com, Jon at recruit-me.com, and I look forward to seeing you, talking to you next Tuesday.